the Crossett Research Center and Experimental Forest, Jim Girard. A few foresters did not agree with such a concept, but it was James W. Jim Girard, a non-forester and non-researcher, who proved that the idea was erroneous. Jim, who had been a timber cruiser and logging engineer in the western forest, had been hired by the U.S. Forest Service to help the assistant director of the National Forest Survey. Almost immediately, Jim clashed with the director and other high-level Washington personnel in charge of the survey. They had intended to publish data on the stocking and growth of an area of Florida's timberland, as it was remembered, that had been inventoried by the survey staff. Stocking per acre was only about 30% of that shown in the Miscellaneous Publication number 50. Growth and yield tables. So the point was to be made in the survey report that the growth was only 30% of normal. Jim would not accept such a statement. He was positive that the growth would be greater than this. After many conferences and harsh words on the subject, Jim proposed a study of pine growth in relation to stocking. This was finally agreed to and was conducted in ponderosa pine stands of various stocking in Montana in about 1935. Results of the study conclusively proved that Jim was right and that it was possible to have, say, 60% of maximum growth in stands with only 40% of full stocking as shown by the growth and yield tables. This finding was later proved correct at the Crossett Research Center and elsewhere, and led to the use of increment core and permanent sample plot studies to determine actual growth in understocked stands. It was also the reason that 100% repeat inventories were insisted upon in later compartment and small plot studies undertaken at the Crossett Research Center. This same Jim Girard was the idea man for the form class volume tables he later developed in collaboration with Clement Miscavige, who at the time was on the staff of the Southern Forest Experiment Station. The first such publication had the title, Tables for Estimating Board-Foot Volumes of Timber. For some unknown reason, the publication was not given a number and was marked for administrative use. It was never published for general use. The Southern Forest Experiment Station in 1947 did publish Tables for Estimating Cubic Foot Volume of Timber by Clement Miscavige, which was based on the Girard form class idea. Both Girard and Miscavige were disappointed that the Forest Service didn't publicly accept the Girard form class tables and recommend them for general use. The pulpwood thinning study, because of the initiation of a market for pulpwood, and because of the very slow diameter growth of trees on most of the heavily stocked oldfield and some natural forest stands, it seemed desirable to determine the effect of thinning in stands of this type. Thus, after much thought and planning, the second study to be undertaken at the center was one on pulpwood thinning. It was begun on June 11, 1936. The objective was to determine the present and future yields, returns, and cost when 1. About 200 of the best trees were reserved per acre on a spacing of 15 by 15 feet. 2. About 100 of the best trees were reserved on a spacing of 21 by 21 feet. 3. 70 of the best trees were reserved on a spacing of 25 by 25 feet. 4. 40 of the best trees were reserved on a spacing of 33 by 33 feet. In each case, trees smaller than 6 inches d, b, h, were not counted as crop trees and were allowed to remain on the plot. At the time, to counter severe criticism of clear cutting, the Southern Pulpwood Association had a cutting rule that it urged its members to use. The association further urged its members to purchase pulpwood only from dealers, contractors, and timberland owners who cut in a manner that would equal, or be better than, the standard adopted. The minimum standard for pine pulpwood was to leave all trees up to and including 7.5 inches d, b, h, and leave one 9.5-inch or larger tree every 50 feet. Such a treatment was included in the study. Also, uncut check plots were included, making 6 treatments in all. The study was undertaken in a 44-year-old oldfield stand with an average basal area of about 140 square feet per acre. It was found that the most net cubic foot growth for the first 10 years was on the plots thinned back to 200 trees per acre. The most board foot growth was about the same on plots thinned back to 200 and 100 trees per acre, with the plots thinned back to 70 trees per acre not far behind. The uncut check plots were far behind in both net cubic and board foot growth. This essay is based on the work of R. Reynolds, The Crossett Story, The Beginning of Forestry in Southern Arkansas and Northern Louisiana. All credit for the original research and findings goes to him. This essay is intended to summarize and present his findings in a format accessible to the general public. The information was found in what we are calling the Ovid Switzer Jr. papers, which we currently have on loan.